and I am your host. Happy to be with you on this Saturday, a lovely Saturday, by the way. Came over even with the sunroof open. That was nice. Producer on hand today is Jared Bro. Jared is the man. Jared and I have three things in common: St. Peter Claver, St. Augustine, and Loyola High School. How about that? Claver Night, Purple Night, and a wolf. Ow! So this show, the next hour, is dedicated to how we can move forward as a community and as individuals. And we're going to be talking about issues that concern us, but most importantly, how to address those issues. And these are topics that impact us on a daily basis. I mean, whether it's your health and your well-being, politics, leadership in every sector, education, business. We can even get into sports, we can get into entertainment, policy, whatever it is, we are going to talk about it on this show, and we are going to want to figure out how we can be aware of it, because you know what they say? They say that knowledge is half the battle. And so as long as we can understand the issue, we want to be able to figure out how we can address that issue and talk about that issue. Now, are we going to solve this thing in a 1 hour show or a 30-minute interview? Nah, it doesn't look like we'll be able to do that. But if at the very least we can have a good conversation and a good understanding about whatever said issue is, then that gives us a great opportunity to figure out how we can deal with the issue. Now, you can have your own plan to deal with the issue. You can get with folks to deal with the issue. Who knows, however you want to do it. But if we on this show, on the way forward, if we can give you a way to understand whatever that issue is, and if we can give you some kind of call to action to do something either for yourself or to hook up with people in your community and do something with them, then I think we would have done our jobs. Are you going to be able to do the whole thing? No. I mean, but can you at least do something? Yes. And I think that's what I really want us to get out of this experience with the way forward. I want us to be able to do something. Let's do something to take the next step. The idea, like I said, is to build that awareness and to figure out how to keep us moving forward. You are definitely invited to be part of the conversation. As a matter of fact, we are live right now from the campus of Xavier University in New Orleans. For all my friends who are listening from outside of the New Orleans area, the number is 504-582-9422, 504-582-9422. Hopefully you're joining us on Facebook. If you don't get an opportunity to join us there, you can join us on YouTube if that's your preferred way to stream live with us. And also on Twitch, which is a new one on me. I did not realize we were on Twitch. I know nothing about Twitch. Nothing. Except that it has a purple logo. That's pretty much it. That's all I got for you. But hey, that's how you can join the way forward. And that's how you can join us on WBOK for all of our great shows. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, WBOK 1230 AM. You can leave comments on Facebook. You can leave comments on YouTube. And then also the Play Old app is another way you can listen. Or if you're here in the city of New Orleans, then you can listen to us the old-fashioned way. Put the radio dial on 1280 AM. And hang out with me on social too, please. I would love for you to hang out with me on social. Eddie Francis 06. You can catch me, Eddie Francis 06, on Threads and Blue Sky. Blue Sky is my new thing. I love Blue Sky. It's basically the old Twitter audience who had sense, and we all found our way to a new platform. We had to leave X behind. We just had to. And so Blue Sky is where the people who got some sense are hanging out right now, and I'm hanging out with them. You can use the hashtag TheWayForwardWBOK. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tune in, and to tune in right now. We're going to be hanging out until 3 o'clock Central Time. And on today's show, I decided that I really wanted to get the show started in the most exciting fashion I could think of. And the most exciting way that I could think to get this show started, this new show on WBOK, is to talk about the economy. And so we have invited to hang out with us today Dr. Gregory Price. He's a professor of economics at the University of New Orleans, and he's going to join us after the break. And we're going to talk about what all the folks are talking about during the 2024 presidential election. You know, there were a lot of people who made a lot of the economy, groceries, gas prices, and Dr. Price is going to help us make sense of this. What drives the price of products? And he'll also help us understand why we pay what we pay for products. And like I said, he'll join us at 2:20 when we go ahead and get started with that conversation. But what I want to do is I want to get this thing started off on a good foot, right? And the way I want to start that is with the segment that I call What's Good. And What's Good is designed to talk about the good news happening in our area. It could be happening here in New Orleans, it could be happening in the state, it could be happening all over the country. And so, what's good? This is what's good. From the Good News Network, I know you've heard this story before, but you're going to hear it again. Two New Orleanians, young ladies who graduated from St. Mary's Academy, Nakia Jackson and Kelsey Johnson, they have found 9 more solutions to the Pythagorean theorem. So let's put this into perspective. For 2,000 years, folks were like, you can't do it. It's not going to happen. The Pythagorean theorem, or as my high school geometry teacher, Coach Tyrone Payne, called it, the Pythagorean theorem. You can't do it. It's not going to happen. But these young ladies come along and they said, no, there's actually a way to get this done. So on October 28th, in a paper published by the two, in the Journal of American Mathematical Monthly, they talked about their solutions, and basically they've done it through trigonometry. Now, by the way, Jackson is a student at Xavier, Johnson is a student at LSU. Many mathematicians over the years have explained why the theorem works using algebra and geometry, but what Jackson and Johnson did at St. Mary's, they were able to prove it using trigonometry, a sub branch of mathematics that focuses on the study of triangles. This was one of those things. I really feel. First of all, I'm bad in math, so this wasn't going to happen for me. I'm just telling you this right now. But it really is one of those things when you look at the interview that they did on 60 Minutes, which was a great interview, and they just sat there and just kind of matter of factly said, "Oh, we just used a bunch of right triangles." I, I, how sway? How did? Okay, good job, ladies. So yes, so they have found 9 more solutions to the Pythagorean theorem. Congratulations. And by the way, I want to prep you for this. When I do this good news segment, I'm going to try to talk about what's happening at our colleges and universities around the city, around the state, around the country, especially our HBCUs and predominantly black institutions. But I wanted to dig up some stories that's happening at our local HBCUs and predominantly black institutions from Xavier University. XU is launching a Master of Science in Genetic Counseling program, the first of its kind in Louisiana. In the program, students will be taught ways to help people understand how genetic conditions and traits may affect their family's health through a curriculum incorporating the latest technologies and emphasizing the best genetic counseling practices. The mission of genetic counseling is to equip students with the necessary skills to become clinical savvy, ethical, compassionate, culturally aware, and forward thinking genetic counselors. From Verite News, Nunez Community College is launching Louisiana's first wind energy degree program. The 2 year program will train students as entry level turbine technicians for the growing wind energy sector, and graduates will be equipped to work high in the sky and far out at sea, supporting the development of planned offshore wind farms in the Gulf of Mexico. And from Dillard University, DU is launching a certificate program and masterclass in media and entertainment in partnership with Ross Studios. Dillard students will get the opportunity to get a leg up in the local media and entertainment industry through innovation and creativity. Ross Studios School in Film Television was founded by Louisiana native Elvin Ross. From Southern University of New Orleans, Dr. Hytham Eid, the director of SUNO's Master of Arts Museum Studies program, received the 2024 Elizabeth McClundy Bolton Award by the Louisiana Association of Museums, and that was for sustained long-term commitment to advancing the museum field and active statewide participation in museum initiatives. And from Delgado Community College, the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program is being hosted by the college and is inviting all eligible small business owners to apply to a free 16-week leadership and growth accelerator program. It's designed to show how you can grow your revenue and scale your business. And you can apply by February 5th at 10KS 10KSB apply. 10KSB apply, as in 10,000 smallbusinessapply.com. 10ksapply.com. And so those are some of the good things. Now, you might have heard something that sounded a little strange, and you might have heard, and listen, one thing I'm going to do on this show sometimes is I'm going to nerd out about higher ed stuff because I used to work in higher ed. I was a communications and marketing director in higher ed at 3 HBCUs. And so one thing I'm going to nerd out on you about right now very quickly is you might have heard me make a distinction between an HBCU and a PBI. So here's the deal. You have a group of colleges and universities around the country that were founded by 1965, and these colleges and universities were founded historically to serve students of African descent. These are your HBCUs. And then there were colleges that were not necessarily formed that way or founded that way, but then what happened is that they started to get a big group of African students or black students on campus, and those are known as predominantly black institutions. You may not realize this, but Delgado is classified as a predominantly black institution, and Nunez Community College, because those populations of black students have grown over the years. And so, yeah, that's my nerd out moment right now. Now, you also may be wondering about something because today is a big day in New Orleans, especially if you are a fan of Edna Karr High School. And that's because Edna Karr is in the state high school championship right now. And they're kind of sort of winning 38-9 over Alexandria High School. Kind of sort of winning. They're doing okay. Vermilion Catholic, by the way, if you want to know some more of the scores, especially if you're in our listening area, Vermilion Catholic beat Ouachita Christian the other night. South Plaquemines, they beat Haynesville. They beat them 20-7. Sterlington beat St. James 35-28. St. James, really, really energetic crowd, always riding for them. And then Archbishop Shaw won last night 28-25. They beat E.D. White, Catholic New Iberia, beat Dunham last night 31-28. Cecilia beat Franklin last night 35-32. And Karr, as I mentioned, they're beating Alexandria 39-8. And later on today, kicking off at 3:30, Ruston is going to be playing Central High School out of Baton Rouge. Now, you also might be one of these folks who is, a fan of this school out of Mississippi called Jackson State. I have a lot of frat brothers who are Jackson State alumni. They're pretty excited right now because Jackson State is beating South Carolina State in the Celebration Bowl 21-0. Wow. Didn't see that coming. Or maybe I did. I don't know. Dion didn't do it. Anyway, so yeah, Jackson State is winning right now, 21-0 over South Carolina State. And as long as I mention in HBCUs, and you're going to find this out when we get our guest on, he is a Morehouse man, Dr. Gregory Price. And so we're gonna probably get a chance to learn more about the greatness that is Morehouse. And this is something. My wife is a Hamptonian. She graduated from Hampton University. So we have this thing, and Dr. Price is actually sitting here right now. We would like to see a panel discussion of a bunch of Morehouse men. Lick it up. We want to see just what we can get out of that conversation. But we'll talk to Dr. Price about the important thing, and that is understanding this economy that we're in. What is it about this economy? Why was so much made of the price of eggs? Why was so much made of the price of gas? And what happens? Why do we pay what we pay for the economy? You can go ahead, and if you want to call in, you can call in and you can join the conversation. As a matter of fact, you can give us a call at 504-582-9422 if you have any questions for Dr. Price. You can also join us on Facebook, WBOK 1230 AM. You can join us also on YouTube, WBOK 1230 AM. Same thing with Twitch, if you were there. WBOK 1230 a.m. And of course, like I said, you can give us a call the old fashioned way. And by the way, also, I might as well just say congratulations to Edna Carr because they're in the third quarter. They're almost in the fourth quarter. It looks like they're going to pretty much tie this thing up, put a bow on it, and go back. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 46-8. So they're going to put a bow on this thing eventually and take it back to the West Bank and have a good time. Congratulations. But, if you're one of those people who believes in miracles, and if you're one of those people who follows NFL history, you do remember that there was a game a long time ago when the Houston Oilers were beating pretty soundly on the Buffalo Bills in a playoff game, and all the people started leaving the stadium, and Buffalo won. Their own fans didn't get to see them win this game, a lot of them. But anyway, so we'll see what happens with this game, and we are going to come back in just a few to talk to Dr. Gregory Price from University of New Orleans on the way forward. I was about to call my show a completely different show because I'm so used to being on other people's shows. But we're going to find out about the economy on the way forward on WBOK, the station New Orleans is talking about. And welcome back to the Way Forward with Eddie Francis. I hope you are doing well on this Saturday. And if you were on Facebook, I went ahead and I put the link to that Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program in there. So again, that link is 10ksbapply.com. And the message that goes along with it is that it only takes a few minutes to apply. It's a free program. You have nothing to lose on this thing. And make sure that you wake up every morning with Oliver Thomas and Dr. Ashanta Wyatt at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on the Good Morning Show. Afterward, join Graylin Bryant Banks and Kemba White Dupree, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on the Front Porch. So the Good Morning Show, 7 to 9 a.m. Dr. White has been on fire lately. And then also the Front Porch with Graylin and Kemba, that's 9 to 12 p.m. here on WBOK, the station New Orleans is talking about. Joining us right now is Dr. Gregory Price. How does the economy work? During the 2024 presidential campaign, a lot was made of the cost of goods. You kept hearing about this. Dr. Price is a professor of economics at the University of New Orleans, former interim dean, School of Business at Langston University, Charles E. Merrill Professor and Chair, Department of Economics at Morehouse College, Director of the Mississippi Urban Research Center, also Professor of Economics at Jackson State University, and an Economics Program Director at the National Science Foundation, also former President of the National Economic Association. Dr. Price, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, Eddie. Yeah, my pleasure, and good afternoon.
So tell us about the Morehouse mystique. There's a mystique about this institution that when Morehouse men, and I tell you, one of my favorite sayings in all of higher education is that you can tell a Morehouse man, but you can't tell him much.
Yes.
That is one of my, and confidently he acknowledges it.
that is a saying, but, I mean, part of the mystique is that, as an institution for all males, I mean, we've always cultivated, a culture of excellence and excellence. So that's fundamentally what it is. The culture of excellence that we manufactured and try to cultivate and sustain. So it's we're committed to that there historically. Yeah.
That is very cool, man. Yeah. I mean it. I really would like to see a conversation of a bunch of Morehouse men in one room and just, maybe not. I don't think liquor would even be needed, but I just have to see this conversation.
Well, if you get around to that, sign me up.
All right, good.
If you get around to
I'll let you know. I'm going to organize it. I'm charging. I'm charging admission to this thing. I'm keeping all the profit. Dr. Price, so it's really hard, I think, for a lot of people to figure out where to start when you talk about the economy. And we're going to do this as kind of an economics 101, a really quick and dirty version of it so that people understand. Because I do think that with the presidential campaign, you kept hearing people, rightfully so, talk about the price of goods going up, especially goods that people need and use all the time. So let's start here. How does that happen? What sets the prices of goods and services in our economy?
Okay, sure. So to get back on our economic principles 101, I mean, we presume that firms are profit maximizers, right? They produce outputs and goods services to a level that they want the highest level of profits. Now, if you recall, that price that they charge in the marketplace is a function of its marginal cost of production, plus the amount of markup it can charge based upon the number of substitutes for a given good or service, right? So the marginal cost of production matters. What does it cost to bring a good or service to the market? Right. So now they can mark up above marginal cost for a particular good or service if it has very few substitutes. For example, if you want pure butter and you don't like margarine, you're willing to tolerate a little bit more price increase, for example.
Okay.
Right? So now, what has happened from a standpoint of the election politics and the electioneering around this? During the COVID-19 pandemic, there were disruptions in the supply chain.
Right.
Let me give you an example. We ordered some flooring that were put on hold for 3 years because it had to come from Germany, right? So the supply chains are choked up, which basically allowed for firms to mark up more and a decrease in supply. So the pandemic was a causal factor in the increase in prices for all sorts of things, chicken, beef, et cetera, because our world is so interdependent now. Most of the stuff we purchase, goods, physical goods, depend upon foreign inputs, right? So when those things are choked up at the seaports because of COVID, the prices went up.
So let me play something out. Let's say that I have a soda I'm producing.
Yeah.
It costs me, I don't know, $12 a bottle to produce this soda. But I need to make a profit. So I'm going to sell it for $15 a bottle, something crazy.
Yeah,
right?
mark up above.
I'm going to mark it up.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to make my profit, whatever that and the margin would be that extra $3 or whatever dollars, right?
Yeah.
During COVID, I'm having a bunch of soda shipped over, and it gets stuck in the ports because this is what we were dealing with, right? We were dealing with
in part, not wholly, in part.
Okay,
in part. But of course, again, the extent to which you can mark up depends upon how many substitutes are available. If you like Coke, are you willing to substitute toward the Rouse's brand of Cola, for example, right? And that depends upon taste, right? So if there are choke ups in the supply chain and a reduction in the amount of substitutes, that allows firms to mark up a little bit more, right? So you got these supply shifts and demand shifts, right? Right. Reduction of substitutes, allowing firms to mark up more. Now, that's for goods and services, but think about the other things. I mean, housing costs went up as well too, right? Housing costs went up too because of individuals. One plausible scenario is that during COVID, a lot of people purchase houses outside to work as you can work from home, pushing up that put upward pressure on rental prices and home prices. So the COVID-19 was a pretty strong factor in the cumulative inflation we have seen, since 2019, a 4-year period. I mean, cumulative prices have gone up for many goods and services on the order of 20%. When you look at the year-to-year increases for eggs, for butter, for chicken, for beef, rents, for example. Yeah.
And it's not
So we call that a shock. A shock to the economy that COVID, constituted a shock that put upward pressure on prices. Yeah.
And it's not like the price is just gonna go down just because we want it to. I mean, these are people who are having to because these disruptions, they cost the manufacturers, they cost the producers money.
Yeah.
So they had to pass that on. They pass it off.
The history of price levels itself is kind of bizarre because if you look at the trend in the price level, up until about 1914, from 1776, the price level showed no upward downward trend. It's a post-1914 phenomenon that the overall price level trended upward. And there are a lot of stories about why all of a sudden after 1914, the price level showed a trend upward. Prior to that, it had no trend, upward, downward. So not that we were around then, but if you were born in 1776 and lived to 1914, the price of eggs would have neither gone up or gone down, right? So that's another story that macro historians have been trying to tell for the past 50 years, about what is it about the price level that's shown in modern times, post 1914, it's only going up, right? It's only going up, yeah.
We're talking to Dr. Gregory Price. He is a professor of economics at the University of New Orleans, and we're talking about the economy, trying to understand what happens, why we pay what we pay. So one of the things that we hear every presidential election, it becomes a topic of discussion. It was a big topic of discussion this time. Is it true that there is a lag after a presidential term that the current president adopts the most recent president's economy in some way?
Yeah, there's a whole literature on political business cycles, whether or not presidents actually have causal effects on the economy. And, it's mixed. But the point is, presidents will own whether they have any control over it or not. I mean, are there for example, there are things presidents could do to make it worse or better. Tariffs, for example, could very well trigger a trade war. Yeah, there are some things presidents could do, but overall, they pretty much, one view is that they're pretty much neutral. Economies do what they do. They follow their own logics, but presidents, there are things you can do to make it worse, or make it better. Experiment with the Kennedy tax cuts, for example, the Reagan tax cuts. Yeah. Those things can trigger increased expenditure that foster growth, but by and large, it's
Does the lever get pulled in policy, or does it get pulled by Wall Street, or who pulls the levers?
Well, the lever gets pulled by policy. Presidents and Congress approve or disapprove of tax cuts or tax increases, and of course, then the markets have to react to that. Ultimately, when if you cut taxes or if you increase spending, for example, you have to issue debt, and Wall Street has to mediate that debt. If you want to spend more or spend less, So ultimately markets have to mediate that there, right? And that's you and I through our pension funds, through our financial advisors. Yeah, absolutely. So it's not a one-way street. Congress, president, they're not dictators, but certainly they have policy levers that can influence how market reacts to things, because increases and decreases in debt associated with taxes have to be mediated through markets. Someone has to buy the Treasury securities, someone has to sell them, et cetera. Right, and that's you and I through our institutions, financial institutions. Yeah.
So it sounds like what we as citizens really need to do, if we really want to understand what's happening with the economy, it sounds like we really have to keep our eyes on Congress a lot of times, and maybe their relationship with the president.
Yeah.
It sounds like, because if Congress is having some issue with the president, then they're going to make some decisions that are going to...
The appropriations, what do you spend and the taxes relative to expenditure? That's a decision that the Senate and the House have to make. Say yay or nay. To the extent that we play party politics, you can presume that Republicans are inclined to agree with their Republican president, but not always, right? But and this is how a democracy works. We vote for our representatives that represent our policy preferences. Do you want to cut Social Security or increase it? And that's how it's supposed to work in theory, you know. Yeah. And so we get what we vote for. We get what we vote for, and we should vote if we have preferences for expenditure and taxation decisions. Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a second, because we often hear that the economy is going to be handled one way by a Democratic president or a Democratic-dominated Congress.
Yeah.
We hear it's going to be handled another way by a Republican president or a Republican-dominated Congress. How do political party philosophies impact the economy?
Well, they do differ because they have different policy preferences. I mean, not the stereotype, but Republicans typically are pro-growth, pro-business,
Right.
low taxes, low spending, and Democrats pretty much want to are the opposite of that. They're typically, I mean, that's a broad caricature, but they have different policy preferences. The extent to which we redistribute from the rich to the poor, the nature of taxes, whether they should be progressive or regressive, and all based upon different theories of what's ideal for the growth rate of the economy. Right? There's competing visions, competing theories of what an ideal economy should look like. Yeah.
Because so the Democratic philosophy, the way it's going to impact the economy, it sounds like, is the Democrats will say, we want America, we want the citizens to buy into the economy. So that's where the taxes come in.
Yeah.
But the Republicans are saying, no, we're not going to do that to you. We want. So are the Republicans married to the trickle down theory that where we want business to drive the economy?
In some broad sense. I mean, let me play it this way. I mean, Democrats are more concerned about redistributive policies. In other words, redistributing the pie to less lower income and less wealthy groups. In other words, a fair economy, a more egalitarian economy. Now, Republicans may not disagree with that. They said the best way to do that, of course, to the extent that they argue that redistributive policies disincentivize productivity. So the best way to do that is to work through tax cuts.
Okay.
So it's trickled down in that sense. It will spur productivity. The so-called supply side argument. If you want people to be more productive, you give them incentives to be productive. In other words, lower their tax rates, the poor and rich alike, right? That's so two different competing visions of how you spur productivity, right? Yeah.
So coming back to what was made of the price of eggs, the price of butter, the price of milk. When you look at all of these dynamics, how does that loop back around to people saying, I don't understand why my eggs are now $5 a carton? Just a year ago they were $3 a carton. I mean, are we still talking supply chain woes? Are we talking about impacts of tax policies? Why does that loop back around?
Well, inflation is a tax. Okay. So, if you will, the individual, the household on Main Street is probably more attuned to the price of eggs and milk than anyone else, because that's I mean, as you go down the income distribution, the food budget share gets larger and larger, right? So, I mean, we go, you and I, well, I certainly probably go more to the grocery store than, say, Donald Trump. So I'm more attuned to fluctuations in the price of that. And my household budget, it commands more of a share of my household budget than, say, Donald Trump. So, you have these distributional effects, right? So middle America, in contrast, and certainly less in middle America, their budgets are much more sensitive to increases in the prices of staples like eggs, chicken, beef, pork, et cetera, right? I mean, if you're a mom or dad, you like to take your kids out to McDonald's. I was always shocked about 2 years ago. I was coming through Darien, Connecticut, so I stopped over to get a meal. It was a bundle meal, double quarter pounder with cheese. It's $21.
Whoa!
This is 2 years ago. I'm saying, wow, and I'd say, wow. I mean, so imagine if I had a tow of kids with me. My kids are grown now, but you're more sensitive to this type of thing. I said, $21 in Darien, Connecticut, which is off 95 outside New York. So things like that. You say, wow.
Wow. How much is an economy impacted from state to state? Does it matter what state you're in?
Well, I mean, the price of gasoline, for example, will vary because different states have different state taxes, right? I mean, typically, when you come to Mississippi, Louisiana, South Carolina, Oklahoma, low. But when you go to, you can go to, when you start going to New Jersey, New York, I mean, the price of gasoline going from South Carolina to New York can virtually double. Even right now, can virtually double just because of the differences in taxes.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's more of a function of state policy
I was
as
gonna
well
say,
too.
so
Right.
now you got state policy.
You got
gotta
state.
deal
You
with.
got state
Yeah.
policy. Yeah. So so gasoline prices can vary over a short geographic hump from South Carolina, New York. That's not that far. Or New Jersey. And I drive that route a lot. So I know gas prices. They can almost double by the time you get to Connecticut. Yeah, you're talking 2.5 times higher than what they are in New Orleans or Atlanta. Yeah. So there's variation in state taxation policies as well as sales taxes, right? You go to New York City, sales tax is one of the highest in the nation. So the cost of a loaf of bread or a dozen eggs is going to be higher than it is in New Orleans or Oklahoma City because of variation in state sales tax rates. So and that's not federal, but those state policy can also affect the prices that we pay for staples like gasoline, eggs, milk, bread, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
So for the everyday person who is asking the question, why are my taxes so high? Why do I not have to pay a state tax in Texas or Florida, but then I come to Louisiana, I pay a state tax? For anyone who is trying to understand why the taxes are the way they are, how can they understand why taxes are the way they are?
Well, let me say, right now we have a cumulative deficit of some $32 trillion. When I left Morehouse College in 1982, our cumulative debt, what we borrowed and not paid for, was $2 trillion. So that's debt that has to be paid for at the federal level. Taxes, you pay that debt down by taxes. State debt is also large as well too. So we have different political jurisdictions borrow to finance all sorts of things. You have Uncle Sam, you have Uncle Louisiana, you have Uncle New Orleans. Each one issues debt to finance their local public projects, right? So when you don't have enough tax revenues, right, to finance those things, you have to borrow. That means you take out the credit card. Right, so you're putting right now at the federal level we have $32 trillion on our federal credit card. At the state level, it's not that much, but it is. But Louisiana has outstanding bonds. New Orleans has outstanding bonds. Right, these things at some point have to be paid for. So the choices are either you increase taxes, which people are generally averse to. Certainly, the Republican Party is, or you cut spending, which boomers like me are also opposed to. Am I willing to sacrifice a reduction in my pending Medicare and Social Security benefits? So it's a paradox in our democracies about how do we pay for things. But anyway, our taxes basically pay for these public expenditures, the public goodies that we enjoy so much, the roads, the Tomahawk missiles. The national parks, the Medicare, the Medicaid, these things, they have to be financed either through taxes and or debt. And we've shifted toward more debt financing over the past 40 years. And many argue that at some point, when will these chickens come home to roost? When will Americans be willing to pay much higher taxes or a reduction in the level of expenditures, right? Yeah.
This reminds this does remind me though of a conversation I had at one of the universities where I was working. I was talking to a group of students, and they said, "Oh, we need a football team," and the university didn't have a football team.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I hope you're ready for your tuition to go up if that happens." And they said, "Well, why would that happen?" And I said, "Well, football teams are really expensive.
They're really expensive.
And so what has to happen is that the university has to pay for that somehow, and most likely you're going to be the one to foot that bill because number one, you're asking for it.
You're asking for it.
But then that money has to come from somewhere. The university doesn't have money just sitting around.
You can't get blood from a turnip. Yeah.
Right.
You
can't start a football team. But I think for everyday people, a lot of us can't really grasp that because we see this big structure, we see this infrastructure around us, we see buildings, we see the roads. It's already here, and a lot of people may not realize that it had to get here. Somebody had to pay for this.
Yeah, think about the levees in New Orleans. We had to put $15 billion in just the levee system around Orleans Parish.
Yeah,
that's serious money.
Yeah,
that's serious. That is serious money, right?
But then also, and I hate to keep looping back around to this, but when you look at the price of goods and services, in those cases, you're dealing with a private company.
You're dealing with a private company, but there's another link between our expenditures and the price level. Particularly when you think about borrowing, when Uncle Sam, Uncle Louisiana, Uncle New Orleans borrow, what do they do? Basically, they trade bonds for cash, and that money goes into the economy. There is an argument, there is a theory that basically when there's more money in economy and productivity, that in itself puts upward pressure on the price level, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a favorite theory of Republicans, that inflation is a monetary phenomena fueled by deficit financing, right? So think about and they would argue, for example, during the COVID pandemic, and Trump was president, when you start cutting these checks, right, that increases the supply of money, more money relative to this. So you have two things going on. Trump cutting checks during COVID, supply chains being disrupted, that puts upward pressure on the price level as well too. That's another mechanism that can cause upward pressure. So that's where deficits can conceivably put upward pressure on the price level when you finance too much with deficit spending. In other words, if you don't use taxes to finance it, you may be putting upward pressure on the price level. Right?
And one of the concerns, it seems right now, with the tariff policies that may come, is that somebody's gonna have to pay for those tariffs and
higher prices, right?
And that might be that's probably gonna be the citizens most.
Yeah.
likely.
If you keep out cheaper, say Chinese goods, for example, Temu, and if you take Temu off the table, you know what Temu is, right?
Oh yeah.
If you take Temu off the table and restrict me to Amazon, Amazon prices are higher, so that'll put upward pressure on the price level. So tariffs can cause the overall price level to increase because you're blocking out cheaper goods and services. Yeah. So that's, all things being equal. That's the downside. That's the possible downside of tariffs. Yeah.
So what about the everyday person? What can the everyday citizen do okay, so we're actually going to take a break right now. So we're going to go ahead, and I got a couple of questions I want to wrap up with when we come back. So we are talking to Dr. Gregory Price. He is a professor of economics at the University of New Orleans, and we are talking about the economy. How does the economy get the way it is? How does it work? And this is the way forward. I'm Eddie Francis on WBOK, the station New Orleans is talking about. welcome back to The Way Forward. I'm Eddie Francis, and we are WBOK, the station New Orleans is talking about, and we are live from the campus of Xavier University. Every afternoon, make sure you join Gerard Stevens with a reality check, 1 to 3 p.m. here on WBOK. And we are in studio with Dr. Gregory Price, professor of economics at the University of New Orleans, UNO. You want to know something funny? I actually know the UNO fight song. My brother was in a pep band at UNO.
Okay.
And so I would go to the basketball games. I remember when the Lakefront Arena opened. Yeah. And I would watch the game. Before the Lakefront Arena, we would go to the Chamber of Horrors. Yeah. Fun games. Yeah. Fun games in the Chamber of Horrors. And my brother was in the pep band, and I still know I still know that thing. UNO, I know that whole thing. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I was actually about to ask you before we went to break. I was about to ask you about the everyday citizen. How can the everyday citizen educate themselves about the economy and at least try to keep track of what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, I would encourage every citizen to, when you read the newspapers, whether it's physically online, I mean, just peruse the business sections. I mean, whether it be the Wall Street Journal or the Times-Picayune. I mean, our business. We have a class of business journalists who are pretty respectable in writing about and weighing in upon economic policy and the economy in general. So those are, I mean, that's one thing I think that should be our civic. That should be a civic imperative, to be attuned to economic policy and the state of the economy, because much of our lives, if a disproportionate amount of our bourgeois lives are tied to the state of the economy. I mean, that's just that's the way it is. So it's incumbent upon us, to be mindful of things and to pay attention, if you will, right? Given all the things that compete for our attention, I mean, that should, I would suggest that should be one that the typical citizen should allocate attention to.
Yeah. And it sounds like also, just figuring out ways to keep asking those questions. I mean, it sounds like the one question that citizens should always ask themselves is, who's paying for this?
Who's paying for this?
Yeah.
And that's a question I don't think we weigh in on, because we can always kick the can down the field, down the road. For example, I mean, I can, I can borrow now to finance my post-retirement, but it can be borne by yet unborn generations, right? 30-year bonds, for example. I mean, you flow a 30-year bond, and 30 years down the road, the bill comes due. Either refinance or you pay for it. So it's easy to do that. That's the miracle of modern financing. You can always push the liability down the road, as long as credit markets are willing to tolerate that there. And we're a superpower, so we can always float. Right now, we've had post-World War II, we're pretty much the only game in town, and everybody will snap up our debt. The Chinese, the Japanese, the Saudi Arabians. That's the luxury of that's one of the luxuries of being a superpower.
And so you just said that you have another country that'll snap up the debt, and this is where the national debt comes in. So this is
not all of it. Not all of it.
So is this where part of it comes in, where America is in a position where some of the money's been borrowed, and now America has to pay somebody back?
Yes. I mean, the Chinese hold some of our debt, the Japanese hold some of our debt, and other countries. I mean,
is this something that everyday people know? Do everyday people realize that there are other countries that hold the U.S.'s debt?
Maybe not.
Will the students in your class say, are they surprised to find out?
Sometimes they are. Yeah. Sometimes they are. Of course, that could be to our advantage or disadvantage, because, I mean, suppose we get in a trade war with China, for example. I mean, the Chinese could say, well, we're going to start selling your debt and cause interest rate. We're going to start selling your debt at a discount, causing interest rates to increase. And that'll wreak havoc upon homeowners or potential homeowners on Main Street, because they'll retaliate by dumping whatever debt they have of ours on markets, having fire sale prices on our debts. And, okay, Mr. Trump, okay.
That's interesting. We do have a caller on the line, so let's see what kind of question we have. Okay. Good afternoon, Cody. You are on The Way Forward. What's your question?
Hey, good afternoon. My name's Cody. Good afternoon, Dr. Price. I'm a UNO alum myself.
UNO proud.
Yes, sir. Mechanical engineering. I just want to see if y'all could talk about, we're talking about the everyday person, things we should be concerned about. One of the things for me is both unionization and corporate tax rate, how workers can push because we know we have the wealth in this country, but it feels like we just have to make a choice to push the wealthy to basically pay for services, public services that used to be robust, and it's concerning to me. We have like a historically low corporate tax rate, and we have to talk about how the everyday person who is struggling needs to pay for these things, like schools and roads and everything. And that's basically what I wanted to ask about and interject in the conversation.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Coda, for your question, and Dr. Price will answer it. Appreciate you giving us a call today. So how would you respond to that, Doc?
Well, certainly when you look at our current outstanding debt, one could argue that taxes are too low. And one source of getting more tax revenue is to increase the tax rate on corporations. In other words, make taxes more progressive. If we want to maintain the current level of expenditures and more retired debt, a case can be made for higher taxes, unless you want to have drastic cuts. So no, I mean, taxes are probably too low given our current rate of expenditure at the federal level, and maybe even at the state and city level as well too. But Uncle Sam's debt, I mean, the retired, it's going to require higher tax rates. It would require higher tax rates. A source, corporations, the corporate tax could be increased to raise more revenue. Now, of course, Republicans will disagree with that because they have a different fiscal theory of the price level. They think you can spur productivity by, I don't know if you remember the Laffer curve back from the 1980s, the idea that by cutting taxes, you can actually raise more revenue. And that was an experiment. But, the evidence, the empirical evidence on it is mixed. But, higher taxes. Let me give a historical example. At the end of World War II,
and we have about a minute left.
At the end of World War II, our outstanding debt was more than 1 year's income. We're there now, too. But between 1945 and 1965, we retired that debt. Why? Because of higher income and corporate tax rates. It enabled us in a 25-year window from 45 to 65 to basically reduce the deficit because we had much higher taxes. We're there again now. Our debt's more than a year's income, which can suggest that higher taxes, corporate and income, would do the trick.
Okay. All right. So just 1 minute left. What can the average citizen do? What's the way forward for the average citizen to try to do something to help participate, to try to participate in shaping economic policy? What can the everyday citizen do? Midterms are coming up, so.
Yeah, well, the average is that our democracy works through political enfranchisement. I mean, inform yourself, be mindful of the basic economics of expenditure and taxes, and vote accordingly. Vote your sensible policy preferences. Yeah.
Dr. Gregory Price, he is a professor of economics at the University of New Orleans. Dr. Price, thank you so much.
My
I appreciate
pleasure.
you joining me today on this first episode of The Way Forward, and thank you for joining us on The Way Forward today. You can check out this episode again on WBOK's Facebook and YouTube accounts, also Twitch accounts. Also, you can follow WBOK on Instagram and TikTok. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to hang out with The Way Forward on WBOK at 12:30 a.m. or streaming live on WBOK1230.com. And as I mentioned, also WBOK's YouTube accounts, the Play Old app and Twitch, and also, as I mentioned, Facebook. And also, you can participate in the conversation. The Way Forward is produced by Jared Bro. And until next week, let's keep moving forward. Thank you for hanging out with me today.